Our vehicles are like metallic cocoons we use to get from place to place. Often without even realizing it, our cars become an extension of our home. You feel safer sitting inside and closing the doors, even knowing how thin the glass between yourself and the outside world is. In this space, we run through many emotions on our daily commutes, from the joy of singing along to a song on the radio, to the rage that befalls us all at the inconsiderate drivers ahead. We invite those into our cars when we feel comfortable doing so, just as we would invite somebody into our homes. They can be a place to eat, to laugh, and in some cases, even a place to sleep or have sex. To find your car broken into is a milder but similar sensation to a home break-in, an invasion of space and privacy that can cause discomfort and concern. Often, these break-ins are nothing but petty crimes of those seeking goodies to sell for profit. But what if it was different? What if that person wished you ill? What if you got into your car unaware that it had even been broken into? What if, as you buckled up for your journey, you were unaware that they were still inside? My name is Luke Mordew, and this urban legend is The Killer in the Backseat. The tale of the killer in the backseat remains one of the most popular stories in modern folklore. It has appeared globally in television and film, often remaining one of the go-to stories on any top 10 urban legends list you may come across on the internet. This story, like many others, has branched off and created younger, more modern tales that are still believed to this day, making this version of the story the parent of many urban legends, awaking fears and anxieties on car journeys that we previously didn't have. In my telling of this legend, we will follow the story of Darren and Cheryl in the car park of a restaurant where the couple had just finished a disastrous first date. Cheryl stepped out of the restaurant, slipping her jacket over her shoulders with haste, taking a few steps out into the car park before finally slowing down to wait for Darren, who was thanking the staff at the door. They shared an uncomfortable glance at each other and a forced smile as Darren arrived by her side. They turned and began to slowly stroll into the dimly lit car park under the beautiful lights emitting from the restaurant wall's decorations. Each step was unbearably uncomfortable for both of them, the crunch of their feet on the pebbled floor below working as a loud reminder of just how little dialogue there was between them. Cheryl could feel that Darren had more to say, watching him turn to her to speak before giving up several times in the corner of her eye. "I'm sorry about in there," he finally said, blurting it out in a manner that seemed to even surprise himself. Cheryl responded with a reassuring smile, nodding her head to hide the awkward glint that shimmered in her eyes as she told him it was fine, hoping that would be the end of the forced conversation she had endured throughout the evening as she neared her car. I get nervous," he added to her dismay. I don't date very often." She nodded again, sighing as she finally arrived at her car, already pulling the keys from her handbag. "I can't imagine you'll be going on any more blind dates anytime soon, eh?" he added, trying to make light of the disastrous night, which Cheryl did appreciate. He had not been creepy or rude. Something in their personalities just didn't seem to gel. Neither seemed to know what to say, but he struggled a great deal where she could fill the gaps and at least make conversation. As she clicked the button of her keys, unlocking the car beside her, she turned to face Darren head-on, deciding to give him the respect of a sincere reaction. She felt he deserved at least that much. "Darren, you're a nice guy, you are. I didn't feel anything, did you?" she asked, putting it all out there for him to agree so they could finally move on and cut the awkwardness in half, hoping that it would dissipate completely. Instead, Darren only worsened the situation as he foolishly leaned in closer to kiss her. She instantly pulled back, a look of surprise, confusion, frustration, and disgust as she replied, "Are you serious?" Darren hesitated, a million thoughts racing through his mind as he tried to gather the correct thing to say in the situation. Finally, Like her, he decided to respond with frank honesty and replied, "I was just trying to show you that I did feel something." This did not help the situation, as Cheryl now felt that she had been ignored, that he was not listening to what she was saying. Until this point, she had felt bad about the situation, but now he had crossed that line into the creepy actions of someone that she did not wish to be around alone in a dark car park. "Darren, I just don't feel it," she replied, trying to sound sympathetic through her frustration before adding, I wish you all the best." And with that, she slipped into the driver's seat of the car, buckled her seatbelt, and began to pull out of the space. Darren watched her as she left, studying her through the windows, angry at himself for never genuinely learning how to talk to new people and handle his nerves. But as the car came into light, something caught him off guard. Something he was not quite sure of. He studied her drive away a little longer as she pulled out onto the country road, engulfed in the light that shone down from the restaurant sign above. A sudden wave of shock, horror, and anger swept over him as he suddenly turned, darting back to his car. He unlocked it as he arrived and jumped into the driver's seat. He did not have time to fasten his seatbelt or check his mirrors. He needed to get to her fast as he sped up the road after her. Unaware of what was unfolding behind, Cheryl was now tapping her fingers to the music that played from her phone that was attached to the dashboard, connected to her car speakers. Outside was dark, only lit by the soft glow of the moonlight that shone down over the country fields and high trees that fluttered by as she travelled. But once again, her peace was disturbed as the music stopped, replaced by the sharp tones of her phone ringing. She looked down at the screen and studied it in confused frustration as "Incoming call from Darren" lit up in bold writing across its face. She studied it in disbelief, so much so that she ended up talking to the inanimate objects surrounding her as she sighed. "Are you kidding me?" She leant forward and rejected the call, welcoming the music to start up again. But this only lasted for another few seconds before Darren's ringing returned. Half expecting this to be the case, Cheryl was mentally prepared this time and instantly rejected the call. But as she did, the two bright lights of her car's full beams began to blast their way through the back window, flashing as they did. For a moment, Cheryl squinted her eyes and waved her hand in the air to signal to them, assuming they were not aware that the full beams of their vehicle were blinding her view. But instead, the vehicle beeped its horn in return. It became apparent to her very quickly that this car's light shining through the rearview window of her vehicle was no accident. As the lights began to flash, the terrifying realization that Darren was now chasing after her hit home. As if by instinct, Cheryl pushed her foot down on the pedal, picking up pace as she began to speed up down the country road, the music still blaring out its playful, happy tunes as the panic began to take over her thoughts. The music cut off once more, leaving her phone's sharp tones to ring through the car's speakers as Darren tried to get through to her. Through the tears streaming down her terrified face, she focused on the road as much as possible, letting her phone ring out. In the car behind her, Darren recklessly drove his car to keep up, his phone pressed to his ear as he pleaded for her to pick up the phone. Finally, the ringing stopped as he flashed his car lights one more. He felt a sigh of relief for a moment, expecting to hear her somewhat panicked voice on the other end. But instead, he found a calm and collected Cheryl telling him that she could not come to the phone right now. It was her voicemail. In his frustration, he screamed at Cheryl's car ahead, which was trying to get away. All he wanted was for her to stop or to pick up the phone. But in that moment of giving into his emotions, he had let go of what clarity he had for a fraction too long, causing him to lose control of the wheel, colliding with the shrubberies at the side of the road and rolling into a deep ditch on the other side, slamming against a tree. Cheryl watched in horrified amazement as the car lights suddenly flung from the road, disappearing into the darkness of the woods to her right. She slowly began to wipe her tears as she lifted her foot gently from the pedal, slowing the car down and bringing herself back to an average pace as she tried to gather her thoughts. The past few minutes had destroyed all sensibilities in her, and all she could think to do was get away. She was conflicted. Does she stop and check if Darren was okay, or should she keep going and call the police, explaining what happened and telling them where he was? She decided on the latter as she reached out to her phone to make the call. But as she did, a notification appeared, pinging through the car speakers as the text flashed up. One new voicemail. In the form of macabre curiosity, she clicked on it, allowing it to play through the car as she continued to drive, curious as to what was on it before she called the police on her strange stalker. The phone beeped, and the loud crashes of the car accident echoed through the speakers where it had caught the final collision against the tree in the darkness, and then silence. She listened carefully, willing for him to at the very least be alive, when she heard his pained, whispered voice as he struggled to speak. "Cheryl," he said. He tried to say another word, and another, and another, but none seemed to come out clear, all mumbled and discombobulated in his bashed up state. Cheryl slowly pulled over by the side of the road as she listened, trying to make out the words emitting from her car speakers against the hissing of her broken engine and the sighs of his breathless attempts at speaking. Unfortunately for Darren and Cheryl, it had all been in vain, as the third member of this tale had already figured out what the words Darren was trying to whisper were and had begun to rise. As Cheryl sat in her car, eyes full of tears as she listened to a hurt man's breaths, the dark shadow of somebody hiding in the backseat of her car sat up. Cheryl noticed in the rearview mirror something flicker in the shadows, looking up as Darren finally managed to say the words, "Someone is hiding in your back seat." This tale's popularity is most likely due to its familiarity. You drive your car late at night down the dimly lit roads, passing by the streetlights that shine above in flickering moments. We are taught to focus on the events of the road ahead and to be alert of what is going on. We're expected to be vigilant whilst ensuring we pay attention to what is happening inside. The anger we feel at incompetent drivers is a nervous reaction cloaked in rage as they create danger on the road you are trying to travel across. The stresses of the other cars of the road and the constant focus required to avoid a collision with an object or an oncoming vehicle requires us to see our car as an extension of ourselves. We must look out through the windows, you and your car, and then the rest of the world. With all this in mind, it becomes clear why the story of a killer hiding in the back seat, waiting patiently to pounce as you focus elsewhere, is so popular. For that shadowy figure to be amongst the extension of yourself is, in many ways, an ultimate invasion of space. Like a virus lying dormant, only to hit with its sickening blow at your most vulnerable. In the legend's most popular form, the story tells of a woman driving down a long road from whatever it is the storyteller decides she's been doing. Before long, another vehicle pulls up behind her, suddenly and violently flashing the full beams of their headlights into her car. At first, she sees this as nothing more than an obnoxious driver impatiently waiting for her to move. It's not until she takes her exit towards home that a darker explanation sinks in as she realizes the vehicle behind her is now following. With no real plan on what to do and a niggling dash of hope that she is merely being paranoid, the driver goes straight to her house, jumping out of her car to dash to her front door to get to safety. To her horror, the vehicle that followed pulls up outside with a sharp brake. The driver jumps out and begins to pace towards her, shouting for her to lock her car door and call the police. It is only after the police arrive that it is confirmed that the stranger in the car behind them is actually trying to protect her. He had noticed the shadowy form of a man in the back of her car begin to rise in the back seat. He flashed his lights to get her attention, but by doing so, he had also caused the figure to slouch back down in hiding. The police unlock the car and check the back seat to find a man waiting in the dark, a butcher knife in his hand that he had intended to use on her. Another popular version of the story will be familiar to those who have seen the 90s slasher Urban Legend. It follows the narrative of a young woman stopping at a pay-at-pump petrol station. Once her tank is full, she closes the lid and pays before opening the front door of her car to leave. However, before she can, the attendant's voice inside echoes from the tannoy above. They ask her to come inside as there seems to have been a problem with her payment. He explains that they've had issues with the card readers, which would be more accessible inside the shop. This was strange for the woman, who had just seen the words "transaction complete" pop up on the little monitor in front of her. She explains to him that it has gone through and that she needs to get off. But before she can get back into her vehicle, he relays the message again, this time more urgent and insistent, even threatening legal action if she were to leave without confirming payment. In her frustration, the woman slams her car door closed and paces towards the building, ready to give a stern word to the attendant inside. The moment she arrives, she does not find an obnoxious man ready to argue, but a man with a look of horror and panic across his face. Slowly, and keeping as calm as he can, the attendant explains that while she was using the pump, he had witnessed a man slipping into the back seat of her car on the opposite side. If you're still with me, then I know you share the same passion for folklore and urban legends that drives this show. But to keep bringing you these stories, I need your help. Every season comes to life with the incredible support of listeners like you on Patreon. For just £3 a month, less than the price of a small coffee, you can help ensure that this show continues to thrive, with shorter breaks between seasons and even more content available. But that's not all. As a Patreon subscriber, you'll unlock exclusive perks like access to our bonus series, Modern Myths, where we dive into lesser-known but equally captivating tales like the Hodag, Black-Eyed Children, the Dark Watchers, and many more. You'll gain instant access to our entire library of bonus content the moment you join, with new chapters coming each season. You'll also get a behind-the-scenes look at how the show is made, discounts on merchandise, and an invitation to our private group chat, where you can connect with me directly and share your love for urban legends with a community of like-minded enthusiasts. Plus, as a special treat, I randomly select patrons to feature in upcoming stories, so you might find yourself becoming part of the very legends we explore. Supporting us on Patreon isn't just about subscribing. It's about joining a team dedicated to preserving and expanding on our collection of folklore. Your contribution directly fuels the research, production, and growth of the show, helping us continue this incredible journey together. So, if you're ready to take the next step and become an integral part of the Urban Legends community, head over to our Patreon page via the link in our show notes and choose the paid subscription. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, where we can keep these tales alive. And now, back to the legend. The tale of the backseat killer roots as far back as the 1960s, spreading like wildfire as it quickly became and remains one of the world's favourite urban legends to this day. The narrative spread so far and wide that by 1982, it appeared in magazine columns written as horrific experiences that had occurred to a friend of the writer who had written in. Although the story itself has no hard proof of ever truly happening, leading to firm speculation that this is indeed nothing but a work of fiction that has seeped its way into the vivid imagination of those that hear it. That being said, there are in fact several genuine encounters that feel eerily similar to that of this legend. As recent as 2017, a woman found a man lurking in the backseat of her car. Reagan Landis had been driving for several miles when the intruder's voice began to speak from behind her in the shadows. The man explained that he meant her no harm and that she was safe, adding that he was hiding from trouble when she had begun to drive. Reagan recommended that she should drop the invader off at a motel. He agreed, unaware that she was going to call the police with his exact location when he was out of sight. As it turned out, they were already looking for him, as the trouble he had suggested he was fleeing were not the gangs he had alluded to, but the police themselves after he had fled a traffic stop. Fairly swiftly afterwards, the stowaway, now found to be Alan Ongiri, was arrested. Back in 1993, an equally eerie event took place when a lawyer by the name of Robert K. Hirsch unlocked and entered his car at 7 a.m., only to hear a voice from behind say, "Give me your cash and I won't do anything." Robert handed the man $300 over his shoulder without looking back, and at that moment, the man jumped out and fled. The events venture darker in 2013, when a 26-year-old woman was at a petrol station in Chicago, USA. She parked her van, filled it up, and entered the building to pay for a couple of items she wanted. She then returned to her vehicle and continued her journey. Unbeknownst to her, and something later proved by the petrol station CCTV footage, an unknown man had begun to check the parked cars outside. And when he found her van was unlocked, he had crept in, hiding in the back, waiting for her return. The marauder did not reveal himself until she had driven away, forcing her to drive to several locations before dragging the victim into the back of her van and sexually assaulting her. After this, he forced her to drive to an ATM where she was made to withdraw cash. And once he had completed his evil deeds of that horrible night, he simply left her behind in her vehicle and escaped without a trace. Stories of a stranger creeping into the darkness of the backseat of a woman's car have circulated the grapevine for many years, exploding further, morphing and evolving at rapid speeds with the creation of the internet. The burst of chainmail that blasted through the doors of early emails made millions of unsuspecting recipients fall victim to false information, once again enforcing the myth of the urban legend and confusing it for reality. The emails, as usual with chainmail, left a warning at the end of their story with the messages to always lock your car door, to check underneath in the back of your vehicle before getting inside, and to try to be aware of your surroundings at all times. These emails left a warning at the end of their story with the messages to always lock your car doors, to check underneath and the back of your vehicle before getting inside, and to try to be aware of your surroundings at all times. The moral takeaway from this story is to be somewhat more cautious when traveling, which, on its surface, is a necessary warning. A dark story with a cautionary meaning reminiscent of the old folk tales of age. And although we should be vigilant, it is also true that situations like this rarely happen to never, with most assailants approaching a vehicle to commit whatever crime they intend to whilst the passenger is already behind the wheel. The source of this urban legend's existence is hard to pin down, as is often the case with urban legends. Although the situation that may very well have triggered the narrative of the killer in the backseat may have been from a true story following the events of New York City in 1964. Although, as is valid with most urban legends, the reality is nowhere near as dark as what it becomes, hence the common embellishments that appear over time. In this actual case, a murderer had escaped from a local prison and, whilst being hunted by authorities, decided to take refuge in the backseat of a car. Very much a killer in the backseat in its most literal terms. Although, there is no suggestion that this was at nighttime and there was nobody there to warn the vehicle owner. That said, this wouldn't be a problem, of course, as unfortunately for the convict in hiding, the car belonged to a police detective and he was shot on sight. In more recent years, The story of the killer in the backseat is widely known to be an urban legend. Although, if you were to ask, I can imagine many would still believe in some factors, with its most recent retellings being an evolution that has crept into the world once more. And it's this version that you have most likely heard for yourself. With race relations still tense in many areas of the Western world and the growing fear of gangs, the story of the killer in the backseat has changed to fit these narratives, playing new fears like the keys of a piano as it hits the notes that we hear and recognize in today's society. Now often told through social media more often than emails, you may have heard the warning shared on Facebook of a gang initiation process, a trap laid out specifically for women. This trap is that on a quiet country road, a crib or a buggy or a pram would be left on the side of the road with what looked to be a baby abandoned inside. Pulling at the heartstrings of their maternal instincts, they would pull over to help, only to discover it was a doll, unaware that somebody had snuck into the backseat of her car behind. This story has many variations, but they all lead to the same thing: a rape gang that tricks women into getting out of their cars in the middle of nowhere so they can attack. This gang version of the legend continues to this day, with many still sharing it across whatever social media sites they're using. I myself have even seen this on several occasions, popping up on timelines all over the Western Hemisphere with the all too familiar caption, "Please be careful," and "Please share." This is often signed off by a police officer who doesn't exist, reporting on a crime that has never actually happened.
Urban Legends is researched, written and produced by Luke Mordew. Original score by Billy Jupp, with additional sounds from storyblocks.com. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, click subscribe on your chosen podcast provider and delve into the mysteries of our previous and future chapters. To find more, including merchandise, video content, images, and more, visit urbanlegendsfolklore.com. If you have more information or a correction on something mentioned in this chapter, please get in touch through our website. We aim to ensure that all information provided is accurate and up to date, and this remains a top priority. If you want to support the show, receive early access, and have more of a say in what we do, then become a patron by clicking the link in our show notes. For these chapters in video format, simply search Urban Legends Folklore on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads, and join our Facebook group by searching Urban Legends Folklore.